All right, part number 2. So the first question we're going to start with is, how do you select risk reward and risk management? Now, this question isn't asked properly, and I am using it to set up something that I've wanted to share with you guys, something I'm going to be talking about a lot more. And I think it's that we should be looking at risk reward separate from risk management, and both of those two separate from trade management. All three of those things are slightly different, and you have to address each one individually. So first, he says, how do you select the risk reward? For me, the risk reward is pre-selected with my entry systems, meaning if I see an A1 entry present, I know where the stop loss should be, and then it's my job to use the indicators that we talked about in part 1, or use my other skills to measure the potential reward. And that's how I set up my risk reward. So with the stop measured, I know the risk. I should know the expectancy of the system, meaning, does it win 7 out of 10? Does it win 4 out of 10? Because that needs to be known so I know how much reward I should be going for. Do I need 5 to 1 in order for this system to be profitable? Or do I need 2 to 1? For me, all three of my systems right now, I only need at least 2 to 1 for me to get in the trade. So I like that because it's a high win rate strategy and it gives me a lot of trades and it fits my characteristics. So that's how I pick my risk reward. Now, how I pick my risk management, that goes into my risk profile. And that's something we teach in our course. It's something that we coined, I think. And what it means to me, a risk profile means to me, is knowing how to grade setups, A, B, or C, and then knowing how much risk percentage you're going to put on the trade because of that grade that you just gave it. Meaning, if I see an A1 setup presented, it's an A1, or an A plus A1, whatever you want to call it. It's a great A1 setup. Not much could be better about it when I grade the parameters. I know that that A plus A setup should get at least 2% of my account, or the 2% of what I can put on risk at that time, versus a C setup that should only get 0.5% risk, maybe even only 0.25% risk, very small risk, because it's a C setup. So that's how I use my risk management and my risk reward together. Now that's separate from trade management. Trade management has to do with basically early exit signals. Do you close because you see something happening? Do you add to the position because you see a reason to add? That's trade management. We could talk about that in a separate video. But for the question here, we addressed it. How do you select risk reward and risk management? It's two separate things. The risk reward is predetermined by the system that you're trading, and the risk management is predetermined by the risk profile that you're using for the system. So all of that should be pre-built. None of that should be decisions that you have to make in the moment while you're trading. Now, second question, I really liked this one, and it said, if you have rules already, is it okay to try new strategies? Is it okay to go and test things maybe that don't have rules? Absolutely. It's definitely okay. And I think it shows the qualities of a experienced trader. It shows the growth mindset of a seasoned and trader, of somebody who's going to make it in this business. The thing about it is you have to go about it in a systematic way. You can't just go test a new idea, test new rules with real money off the jump. I think you need to go through that like 3-step process we talked about in the webinar last week about igniting and sustaining the process. The first thing is you need to do the back testing, do the research, generate the idea, then test it with a demo account, then test it with small money in a live account before really putting big size into it. And I think those 3 steps have to be done before you go and say, yeah, here's a new strategy. I'm going to be looking for this every day. For me, I had the A1 system, and that was used for a while. It's still used every day. I used it today. But as time went on, I started to see more patterns, and that developed the D1 and the D2. The D1 and the D2 didn't come out to you guys, to the public, for a year and a half after I started using it, because I wanted to demo test it, live test it, and make sure that it really was solid, make sure that idea really was profitable before I brought it to the public, before I brought it available to you guys to use. So I think, yes, you can definitely find new strategies. You have to, if you're going to maintain that growth mindset. If you're going to evolve and adapt in changing markets, you have to find new strategies. You have to be willing to test new rules. But again, that test word is crucial. Test the idea, test it on demo, test it on live, and then go bigger into it. Once it's proven, don't just think it's going to work. That's foolish. That's gambling. And that's not what we're trying to do. This is serious business. So yeah, good question. I love that question. Now, so the last question we're going to talk about in part 2 is, how do you manage emotions? And I'm tying that into another question, which was, do you ever become gun shy, like scared to pull the trigger on a trade? And I think that it's important to tie these two questions together in the same video as what I just answered, because it all goes back to the system that I was speaking about. It all goes back to that tested and proven strategy. So do you ever become gun shy? Do I ever hesitate on a trade? Not often anymore, because I've done so much work, so much testing, and I've spent so much time trading the same system. So how do you prevent yourself from being trigger shy? How do you prevent yourself from hesitating before you get into a trade? You put in a lot of work into the system to make yourself subconsciously, as deep as possible, believe in the system, so that every time the entry presents, you know where the stop loss should be, you know what the risk profile is, so you know what the size should be, and you have no fear to take that trade. The only way to get yourself there, in my opinion, is doing the work, putting in the hours, whether that's in markups, whether that's in videos and study, and in the live market as well. And that question tied into how do you manage emotions, which I think, again, goes back to the system. The systems remove the potential for emotional decision making. If you have rules, there's no way for emotions to sway you. You're either following the rules or you're not. And if you're not, you're broken edge, you're off on your own. If you were collecting data to test this edge, you've now created an outlier in the data set, and it can't be tracked. You're off on your own. Like I said, you're the guy across enemy lines. We can't help you anymore. So to manage your emotions as a new trader, if I could go back and tell myself something 5 years ago, it would be just find better rules, meaning more profitable rules, and it would be stick to those rules. Hold yourself accountable, Austin, and ask someone. I should have asked people sooner to hold me accountable to the rules. Riley and other people she wasn't close to me when I started trading, but you get the point. Whoever was close to you when you started, that's who you want to go to, or maybe even now, if you haven't done it yet, find somebody that you can go to and say, hey, these are my rules. I know it might not even be the same way that you trade, Steve, but listen, Steve, I need you to hold me accountable to following these rules. Can you check in on me every couple of days and see how I'm doing? Read my journals, see my trades, let me know what you think. That type of accountability is going to lead to massive growth. It'll prevent emotions from coming into your trading, from impacting the decisions that you're making with your hard-earned money. So how do I manage emotions? I use rules that are tested and proven, and I do a lot of back testing and a lot of work, and I use accountability to keep myself within the rules, tight to the ropes, just working my edge. That's it. Everything else is noise. I'm just working my 3 entry and exit systems. That's my edge, and that's all I want to do. So yeah, emotions can play into it, especially when you start trading thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. But that's why I always preach to you guys to not look at the money. I have to do that myself sometimes. Close the money and not worry about it, because it does influence us. It can make us emotional. So there's a couple little hacks that you can do, like closing the terminal and making sure you don't see that. But at its fundamental level, how to manage your emotions comes back to better rules. If you have solid systems, tested entries with predetermined stop losses, with predetermined take profits, with a risk profile that tells you how much size to put on the trade, so you have it all predetermined, how can you be emotional? Well, you can be, but you know you're going to be breaking edge, and that's going to be a conversation that you need to have with yourself at the end of the day to address that. So managing your emotions goes back to your rules, goes back to your systems, and it starts with a tested and proven system. Now, that wraps it up for part 2. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe, give this a thumbs up. It does help us reach other traders in the community. I've got 2 more videos from this Q&A session coming for you next, so let's move into part 3.